Okay, I'm going to give a shortened version of what I was going to say because these gentlemen have to move along. So first of all, thank you for being here today. Welcome to Ronald Reagan National Airport. Happy to be joined by our two senators from Virginia, Senator Kaine, Senator Warner, and my two senators, because I am from Maryland, Senator Van Hollen and Senator Cardin. We're here today to talk about the slot and perimeter rule proposal that's up on Capitol Hill for 56 additional flights, 28 outbound, 28 inbound, which we believe would generate some 3 to 4 million additional passengers here at Ronald Reagan National Airport, the airport that has the busiest runway in America, one runway that can handle commercial traffic, and so we are very adamantly opposed to any changes to the slot and perimeter rule simply because of the fact that it will add inconvenience to all who travel through this airport. We do have, on a regular basis, cancellations and delays above and beyond our sister airports at Dulles and BWI. And we cannot afford to exacerbate the challenges that we already have with roadways, with parking, and with this one runway that handles all of this traffic. So, again, I'm very pleased that we're joined by our senators, and I'm going to turn the podium over to Senator Warner to further talk about this challenge. Thank you. Senator Warner.
Well, thank you, Jack, and thank you for your great leadership at the Airports Authority. Welcome, everyone. I want to particularly thank all of the pilots that we've got behind us. I would add, while we've got one American pilot, Pilot Johnson here, there were a number of others that were supposed to appear, but they got boxed out by flight delays happening today. We all know what a disaster yesterday's traffic was, but an example of the kind of overflow we've got at National already is the fact that so many of our American pilots could not end up showing up today. What Jack already said, we're all going to reemphasize, National just does not have the capacity to take on these additional flights. Matter of fact, if you look at the difference, and Jack gave some of these statistics, but National is 1/14 the size of Dulles. This affects not just Dulles, it affects BWI as well. One of the ways we get good international service out of the greater DMV area is because we bring these long-haul flights in from the West Coast. They either go to Dulles or go to BWI, and they continue on to international destinations. So not only would that, if this legislation goes forward, will it make it untenable in terms of the delays here at National, it will also cut down the number of international flights that would come out of the region. Now, I got to acknowledge, as somebody who literally lives close enough in Alexandria, to quote former Governor Sarah Palin, I can see the Capitol from the third floor of my house in Old Town. Some of my colleagues around the country may not have that much sympathy. I understand the fact that they'd rather sometimes fly more into National. It might be a little bit more convenient. But the amount of disruption that will take place at National if this slot agreement is disturbed will dramatically slow down and increase delays here at National. Matter of fact, these bigger planes take much longer to get into a slot, to get into a gate, and again, that will push back all of the traffic for everyone flying into National. And disproportionately, you'll see cities that are second tier and state capitals around inside the perimeter rule, unfortunately, lose those slots as well if we go forward. So we've got to make sure that we hold on this issue. Our friends from Maryland, there are certain areas where we agree, certain areas we disagree. On this one, we are fully united. And I would simply point out, the last time this issue was litigated in Congress, it took an additional 3 to 4 years to get an FAA reauthorization bill. We need an FAA reauthorization bill, but if we disturb this balance between National, Dulles, and BWI, at least speaking for this senator, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that bill does not become a law. This is important for the whole region. It's important for the traveling public. It's important for the safety of the men and women who are behind us who fly. I know we're going to have Captain Marianne Schaefer, who is the head United pilot, also an Alexandria resident, who is going to speak to the firsthand concerns that she has as a pilot flying into this airport and the other region's airports. And with that, I'm going to make sure I turn it over to my good friend, somebody who has been serving in the Senate longer than the rest of the three of us, who is going to hang up his spurs this year at the end of the session. A great friend and a great senator, Ben Cardin from Maryland.
Senator Warner, first of all, thank you very much. Senator Kane, it's good to be with you, and Senator Van Hollen. Why are the four of us together here, the senators from Maryland and Virginia? Because we are very concerned about the regional impact of a change in either the perimeter or slot rules will have on our region. We have 3 viable airports, and we want to make sure they all remain viable. It depends upon the type of service that can be provided to the flying public. And when you take this airport here and you try to take it even further beyond its design capacity, you're going to have challenges and you're going to have problems, and it's going to affect this region. Yes, there's safety issues. There's also economic issues involved here. Now, we reached an agreement many years ago on the perimeter and slot rules that were supposed to give predictability to the growth of 3 airports. Investments were made at Thurgood Marshall BWI Airport, at Dulles Airport, based upon the understandings of what the traffic would be here at Reagan National Airport. You know, it's time to honor those understandings. It's time that we recognize that there's a reason why that agreement was reached. So for the viability of this region, it's critically important that we live by the current rules and not expand the number of flights or the perimeter of the flights. So we can talk about safety, we can talk about passenger experience. It's common sense that we recognize that at Dulles and at Thurgood Marshall BWI is where we can have those long-leg flights. We have the runways to handle that, and we have the investment to make it the right way for the flying public. So we are united on this, and we are passionate about it because it affects this region. It affects our states. It affects the viability of our airports. And I can tell you, we're going to continue to fight to make sure that that agreement is honored, and we will do everything we can to make sure that the FAA bill, we hope there is an FAA reauthorization, but it cannot contain a change in the slot or parameter rules. One of the great champions for air traffic safety in the United States Senate, a person who has done so much on so many, we serve on a couple committees together, Tim Kaine.
Thank you, Ben. Well, good afternoon to all of you. We do need an FAA reauthorization bill. We desperately need it. We need more air traffic controllers. We need all kinds of other improvements. And the last thing we should do is block that necessary advance by letting Congress get in and try to micromanage and say, why not 56 more flights into Reagan National? You know, Congress used to run this airport. I mean, this was part of the federal government, Reagan National and Dulles. And the federal government didn't do a very good job managing these airports. And so in the 1980s, then Transportation Secretary Liddy Dole hired my father-in-law, the former governor of Virginia, to lobby so that the airports would pull out of federal control and become part of the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, and BWI is part of its own Maryland Airports Authority. And the judgment was, what do members of Congress know about how many flights there should be and where they should be from? Let's put the operation of this regional system of airports into the hands of professionals. And it's worked. The MWA is able to issue bonds and raise revenue, not relying on the federal budget every year to determine what kind of improvements they can make, and what you've seen is dramatic improvements at this airport and Dulles, and a huge federal expenditure to finally extend metro service to Dulles. That opened in November, and it's already been 1.5 million customers have ridden on that Silver Line extension to Dulles. The last thing we should do is let Congress start to micromanage this again. When the negotiation happened to remove these airports from congressional oversight, there were important compromises made. There were compromises made to spread the business among the 3 airports to best serve the region. There were compromises made to spread air traffic so that no small group of neighborhoods would be more subject to jet noise than other neighborhoods. These are compromises that are important to maintain. But most importantly, compromises were made to protect passenger safety and the safety of airline personnel, and to reduce congestion that really can make the flying experience very, very bad for consumers. So let's let these authorities run the airports in the way they want to run them, to best serve this region, to promote safety, to promote reductions of delay, to spread jet noise so that no single group of neighborhoods suffers more than others. That's what's happening right now. To add another 56 flights, this airport was built on a footprint that was determined to be sufficient for 15 million passenger trips a year. It's now at 24 million. It's now at 24 million. And to add 56 more flights here would upset all of these balances that are maintained by operating the airports the way that they're currently operated. So let's get an FAA bill done, and let's not cloud up that important priority with members of Congress who frankly aren't experts in this, thinking they can micromanage something that they don't truly understand. And with that, I'm going to introduce a great friend, wonderful colleague. We work together on the Foreign Relations Committee and other committees as well, my friend Chris Van Hollen of Maryland.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim. It's great to be here with my colleague from Maryland, Ben Cardin, with our Virginia colleagues, Tim Kaine, Mark Warner. Jack, thank you and your team for what you're doing. As Senator Warner said, there are times when Maryland and Virginia disagree on some things. This is not one of those times. This is a partnership across the Potomac River for the good of the entire region and for the good of the flying public. What you have here is pretty simple. You have some members of the United States Senate trying to convenience themselves, even though it will inconvenience everybody else, including the flying public. Why will it inconvenience so many others? Well, you heard from Jack and my colleagues that if you add all these slots and all these flights, you're going to take an airport, national airport here, Reagan National, that's bursting at the seams, and make it even harder for people to navigate this airport, to make their flights on time, to park. In fact, there was an analysis done by the FAA that shows that 20 more daily round-trip flights on national schedule would increase delays by 26%. By 26%. So what does that mean? It means an airport that is already struggling is going to have to essentially accommodate things that it simply cannot accommodate with its current structure. As I understand it, National already has more holds, in-air holds, than any other airport in the country. I know our pilots thank you all for what you do, but that means that they're having to circle more and more here at National, more than in any other airport in the country, because it's already too packed. Why is it already too packed? Because Congress intervened in the past. Congress has done this in the past, and we're here to say enough is enough. The plan is in place, as you heard. BWI, Thurgood Marshall Airport, Dulles Airport, they've all made long-term investments based on what they understood to be the rules of the game. And the rules of the game were set to make sure that we meet the needs of the flying public and the needs of the region. And so what you have is some members of the Senate that want to throw out the rules of the game, rewrite the rules of the game once again, so that they can get back and forth a little quicker themselves, even though it means delay, more delays for everybody else. And it also means that those really important investments we made at those other airports within this region will go to waste, that they will not be fully, the benefits of those investments will not be fully realized. So I just say amen to what my colleagues have said. We all want to see an FAA reauthorization bill. We want to see that. But it cannot include this provision that changes the rules of the game, that upsets important investment that other folks have already made at the other airports, and which inconveniences the flying public with more delays, more safety risks, just to provide a little more convenience for some members of the Senate. And now it's my pleasure to turn this over to one of our pilots, United Airlines Systems Chief Pilot, Captain Schaefer, who oversees a workforce of 12,000 pilots and with nearly 20,000 hours of flying time herself, has a deep understanding of what both pilots and passengers experience every day here at National Airport. Why don't I turn it over to you?
Thank you. My name is Captain Mary Ann Schaefer, and I am United's System Chief Pilot. I want to start by saying thank you to Jack Potter, Senators Warner, Kaine, Cardin, and Van Hollen for their outstanding leadership on this very important issue. It's an honor for me to be here with my fellow pilots to share our views on why having increasing slots and changing the perimeter rule at DCA is a bad idea. I'm a Virginia native, and my first flight here was more than 35 years ago in a small Cessna. Since then, I have flown Boeing 737s, Boeing 727s, Airbuses, and Boeing 757s in and out of Reagan. As we all know, Reagan is at capacity. It is a great airport, but adding longer flights will increase ground congestion, add to delays, and burden the local community with added noise. While there are 3 runways here, only 1 is sufficient for long flight departures. Departing on long flights means we are flying heavier airplanes with higher fuel loads. Heavier airplanes means higher engine takeoff thrust settings and more noise for a longer period of time for our surrounding neighbors. Ground congestion is also more likely for these long flights, with larger airplanes causing long delays getting into the gate and overcrowded holding areas waiting for takeoff. I've flown long flights out of Reagan and faced these challenges, and while it is truly my favorite airport, changing the rules will take Reagan from a convenient and efficient airport with some of the best controllers to overcrowded and delay-ridden. As pilots, we carry the burden to safely manage the operational challenges of operating in and out of this airport, getting our passengers to and from their destinations in a timely manner, and directly supporting our customers when we experience delays. From my personal experience in the cockpit and that of my colleagues, changing the rules will make our jobs harder and worsen the delays at Reagan National Airport. Thank you for your time, and I'll pass it back to Senator Warner.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Schaefer. Before we start questions, one quick factoid that I don't think fully got out there, but, you know, I mentioned that Dulles is 14 times larger than Reagan. Yet at this moment in time, Reagan already has 1 million more passengers a year than Dulles. And as Tim mentioned, many of us, frankly the whole region, has invested for decades to make sure we get that silver line to Dulles. That is one of our gateway airports for the National Capital Region, and the effect it will have on our international travel is going to be tremendous as well. Also, I want to acknowledge we've got one of our flight attendants here. There were others going to be here. But again, flight delays caused a little bit of consternation there as well. Let's open the floor to a couple questions.
All 4 of you are Democrats, but there is bipartisan support for this bill that you know in the Congress. Senator Bethesda told the New York Times it's tired of having to drive to the airport an hour away can you do to stop this if so many Democrats and Republicans are looking at this and saying that sounds a lot easier?
There are a whole host of Republican senators that fly disproportionately, frankly, out of destinations that American and United serve, who are with us, this broad-based coalition of smaller markets that are kind of not only east of the Mississippi, but frankly, east of Denver, could see their slots, see their flights international replaced by these, frankly, more lucrative long-haul flights. I have a lot of sympathy. John Tester's a great friend. I've done that travel. It's 11 hours for John, 2 flights, and then a 2-hour drive. But I don't think this doesn't break down, candidly, on partisan grounds. It in many ways breaks down on which airport or which airline already serves it. Is that fair? Yeah.
So reported there was an agreement, we didn't get it marked up in the Congress committee, but there reported there was an agreement between Senators Campbell and Cruz on the slot issue. I'm assuming you oppose any change to the slots. So I'm curious what you will do if you do get an agreement on the bill that could end it.
Listen, I'm a good friend of Chair Cantwell. We've all made our views explicitly clear, as well as other members of the Commerce Committee. None of us are on that committee. But this is, again, history has shown in 2018, when this issue was not litigated, we got an FAA bill very quickly. Back in 2009, took us an extra 4 to 5 years before we ended up with an FAA bill. Please. You want me to? You want to?
We recognize the politics of this, but this goes beyond politics. There's a question, as was pointed out by, I think, Mr. Potter, who should be making these decisions, or Senator Kane said it. Should Congress be controlling this airport, or should the professionals be controlling it? We are already beyond capacity at this airport. So the issue is not the politics of it on Capitol Hill, it's the merits of the issue. And we know the impact it's going to have on our communities. We know what's going to happen here, and we know what the flying public's going to experience in delays, and that's going to cause a problem for the entire region. So we're prepared for this. And I think when you look at the logic of this, you look at the safety issues, it comes down pretty clearly against any change in the slot or perimeter rules. And that's the point we're going to be making to our colleagues. And we hope that they'll do what's right, and that is resist any change.
I think this is tough whenever it comes up. I've been here 10 years, and Mark is right. When this gets inserted into the FAA, it just delays getting an FAA reauthorization bill done, and there's so many other equities in that bill that have to get done for the safety of the entire American public that flies and all the personnel. So I don't know that it's tougher than in the past. You're right, there is maybe a more organized campaign spurred by one airline, but just look at the data. What does the FAA say about it? They say it'll increase delay. What do the airports authorities that run the 3 airports say? They say it's a bad idea. Congress gave up the micromanaging of these airports nearly 40 years ago for a reason, because they didn't do a good job at it. The authorities are doing a good job at it, so Congress shouldn't get back into the micromanaging game. And even the deal that was supposedly announced, you do a deal that's partial, then the next time it's going to be another add-on, right? So we just got to stop the micromanagement right now and let the authorities run these airports in a way that serves this community and the flying public.
Take a couple more, and then we actually go back and vote today. Yes, ma'am. Well, there are a host of other issues that I think, had the markup not happened, I think there were pilot hour training and other issues. But I would simply point, you got to look at the history of FAA bills. 2018, there was decisions made to not litigate this. We got an FAA bill very quickly. Back in 2009, I think it again was 4 to 5 years.
Looking at the crystal ball, how
Chris, you want to take this one? Sure.
Well, I expect it to last until the proponents of this proposal decide to drop it, because we're in this fight to the end, and we've made it very clear that we want to work constructively, as we always have on an FAA reauthorization, but their decision to insert this issue into that bill will cause delay. They are causing delays by taking an issue that's not currently, part of the normal reauthorization and trying to insert it into this process. So as soon as they recognize that it's a bad idea to inconvenience the flying public, to put people's safety potentially at risk, the sooner we'll be able to move on with the FAA reauthorization.
Let me just add very quickly, we've been talking a lot about the Senate bill. The House bill did come out of their markup without any change in the perimeter rule, but there are clearly, and they may take up their FAA bill on the House floor as early as this week, but we are very aware that there are, some members of the House who are trying to launch a similar effort as well. So, not that we're going to have our House colleagues all back here tomorrow for the same press conference, but they are, again, united on this issue. Yes, please. I think we've been very clear that we feel like the FAA bill should not include this change on slots. Well, last question. Well, there are a couple slots that I don't think have been fully utilized yet. I'm not going to sit here and talk about where we end up. Our position is uniform and it's clear. And I think Tim Kaine said it best. Congress should not mess with the professional running of the region's airports for both the safety of the traveling public and, for that matter, for the convenience of the traveling public, who will otherwise see dramatic increase in delays here at National. Thank you all very much, everybody.